Welcome to the Competitive 40K podcast brought to you by Vanguard Tactics. This is a Warhammer 40K podcast where we analyse the meta, develop strategies to help you become a competitive 40K player. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and it is our mission to raise the standard of the game both on and off the tabletop. Now, welcome back. This is Season 2 of, obviously, the show, Episode 1. And why is it Season 2? And that is because 9th edition is dropped and we are now back. So the podcast will be back every single week and it'll be released every single Friday without fail. I promise you. Now, today we are joined by Jack Downing. How you doing, Jack?
I'm very well, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Still recovering slightly from the weekend. Don't worry, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't a heavy weekend like that. But myself and Jack are going to tell you a little bit more about what we were doing at the weekend. And for those who haven't, heard Jack before, Jack is our resident Tau player, one of my co-coaches, and has been with Vanguard Tactics since day one. So Jack, for me, has an incredible insight and very critical about the game. So it's an absolute pleasure to get you back on the show, Jack.
It's great to be here again, talking about 9th edition.
Yeah, so what were we doing at the weekend, Jack?
We were at the first ever Vanguard Tactics Grand Series tournament.
That's it. So it was a 30-person event and held in England in Poole. And it was one of the first ever events of 9th edition, like official 9th edition events. And yeah, we literally ran that 1 week after the rules had dropped, hadn't we?
Yeah, it was great to get straight in there and get back into the competitive scene.
Yeah, and we had it was a foreground event, and foreground is the company that we're working with now. They actually host our studio, so the Vanguard Tactics studio is complete, and we are now rocking and rolling with some incredibly new standard of footage, videos, and we're really back now with vengeance after obviously the lockdown and all that horrible stuff. So if you're still tuning into us, we really appreciate it. We are sorry there was a bit of a delay between these shows, but obviously now we are back and really excited about where we take things going forward. Now, a couple of things to note. Everything that we talk about today, and we're going to be covering our 3 main segments on this show, and that is 40k in focus. We then talk about better the meta, so we teach you how to beat the up and coming lists, and then we're also going to do an army analysis at the end of this show where we're going to talk about one of the coaches lists or Vanguard Tactics tacticians lists, where we can really dive deep into how that list works in a little bit more detail. So your 40k in focus is the main segment. We're going to pick a topic. So today is going to be 10 things we've learned about 9th edition from our event. And I think since, what do we have? 30 players playing 6 games. That's 180 games that we experienced over the weekend. And it's given us a really good, deep insight into 9th edition. We've obviously play tested a lot, haven't we, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. But nothing quite compares to pitching your wits against the unknown. So it was great to get out there and get back into that tournament setting, where you don't know who you're playing and what style they're going to play, how their army's going to work, what tricks they got up their sleeves. So it was, I was very grateful to attend and be a part of the event team and to get these games in.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really wanted to do was kick off 9th edition, being kind of at the forefront of, competitive gaming, which is exactly why we've got the name of this show, because that's the way we like to do. We really want to raise the standard of our students. So we've got our Vanguard Tactics Academy that supports this podcast, and really we've got, 160 students on there now, which are tuning in every single week, taking their lessons, doing the daily tasks to help them improve. And, we want to be at the forefront in the cutting edge of tactics strategies in 9th edition. And that really comes through experience, not just sort of math hammer or theory crafting. What matters most is what happens at the tabletop. So, really got a good insight we want to share with you today. Now, all of the content that we're going to be talking about is going to be over on our website, and to get the show notes for this show, you need to head over to www.vanguardtactics.com/blog/S2EP1, which will stand for Season 2, Episode 1. So every single show from this point onwards, just look at the number of the show and just put S2 in front of it, then EP whatever, and you're going to find the show notes, or just head over to our website and you can find it on the blog page. But that way we can talk about, the list that, for example, is in the army list analysis, and also any other bits and bobs that we want to refer to. Like, we've got a massive, massive giveaway at the moment, haven't we, Jack, running?
It's huge, and you still won't let me enter the competition. So I'm not particularly happy with you on that one, but that's a side note.
Yeah. So in order to win the competition, and basically, if I can remember rightly, the things that we're giving away is the following. The VT objective markers and also combat gauge. We've got a new 60 by 44 map. We've then got a full box of the Vanguard Tactics in foreground sci-fi terrain, which fills an entire table's worth, perfect for 40k and sci-fi games. We've then also got an Indomitus box to give away. We've then also got the Catachan kernel to give away in this same prize. We've then also got a VT hat and a VT stainless steel coffee mug. And I think the final prize is, well, I know what the final prize is. It is a day playing 40k with me and Joe, or maybe even Jack if he's available. And I'll take you out for lunch as well. So as long as you get yourself to the Vanguard Tactics studio, then we can have a full day of gaming, whether you want to be coached, whether you just want to use one of the armies from the cabinet, and we can just play some really good games, whatever that might be. So that is the prize. And in order to win that prize, all you need to do is head over to YouTube. You need to subscribe to the show. And also what you need to do is find the video where we talk about the big competition. Watch it. It is quite funny, if I say so myself. Comment on that video, and then all you need to do is subscribe to our brand new course, which is called Learn to Play Warhammer 9th edition. It's an entire, like 3 or 4 modules, all online course. You get an idea of how the academy works and what that looks like, but it's completely for free. There's no catches. It's to help you get the most out of 40k. And if you want to see where that link is, if you want to find it separately, then you just head over to our website. Again, all the links are there, but it's a completely free series. The standard is really up there in terms of any content that we've produced in the past. And if you take the quiz at the end of the module and course, then you can actually 10 times your chance to win that competition. So the feedback on it's been fantastic. I think we've got over 2,000 people on that free course already in the space of literally 2 weeks. So yeah, check it all out. There's loads of stuff to get stuck in with. Now, 40k in focus, Jack. What are we talking about today?
So we are talking about the 10 things that we learned from the event of the weekend.
Yep. And what's our first one we're going to talk about?
So I think the first one is very prevalent topic at the moment, is how can we play safely in this COVID-19 world, and how that can be achieved to get us back on the tabletop.
Yeah, so this one obviously was massive for us. We decided from the get-go, if we're not going to play a safe event, we're not going to do it. And that's with everything we do at Vanguard Tactics. We have that same attitude. If we're not going to do it properly, then let's not bother. So right from the start, we wanted the councils, or the local council, local authority, and health organisations kind of okay, and their approval, which we did get. And in order to do so, we had to fill out risk assessments. We needed detailed player packs, but more importantly, and to really help everybody feel safe, everybody had to be diligent all of the time. And we had a one-way system, didn't we, throughout the venue?
Yeah. I think your briefing at the beginning of the event really set the standard that we're looking to the importance of what we were doing, and it was great to see that everyone adhered to the rules 100%. It was I was amazed by everyone's attitude and desire to make sure that this worked, and I can only thank those people for their contribution towards that as well.
Yeah, and it was, there's a lot of pressure because, the Vanguard Tactics Grand Series is actually become the pilot study for tabletop gaming going forward for safety procedures. And, Poole County Council have really helped us the entire way and really supported what we've been doing. But it hasn't been easy, and it's one of those things that everybody needed to be on board, and everyone just executed that perfectly. Like the player pack I had to write with the team here was so in depth and detailed, but it actually really helped make everyone feel a lot more reassured. And I've also been told already a lot of other places have actually copied our player pack without our permission. Now the problem with that is that the player pack was designed, very detailed for that venue and at that time. And actually, there's been a lot of changes even since that first draft of the player pack went out. So if you have seen it and are using it as your template, number one, what I would say is get in touch with us first of all. Do not run your event off our player pack because it will not be fit for purpose and you'll be running an unsafe event. But if you do need help, please get in touch with us because we want events to be up and running and most importantly, be safe for everyone. So some of the measures that we had in place were, masks for absolutely everybody. Everybody was given a new pack of PPE every single day, so hand sanitizer, face masks. Everyone was given fresh dice trays. The terrain was set up in a way where only really judges touched it to minimise that. We had a 2 in, 2 out system at any one time, so we made sure people weren't crossing over. We had like 6 judges, didn't we? So you didn't need to walk around the venue to try and get a referee. There was just one within, like as soon as you put your hand up, a ref would, come over. There were so many other things that we put in place to make sure it was a perfectly safe event, or as safe as it possibly can be during this time. But it is possible, but it really takes a responsibility on everyone to make sure that happens. We use like the track and trace system, temperature checks, you name it, we did it. So, and yeah, the feedback's been great, and I think everyone did feel safe at the venue, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that showed everyone's attitude to it, with keeping their masks on and stuff like that, making sure they're minimising movement around the venue during the rounds, making sure to go outside and take a break from your mask as well. That was important. But one of the takeaways from me is I was perfectly comfortable for 2.5, 3 hours wearing a mask for the event. I could still communicate well with my opponent. I have to use a few more hand gestures to make sure that you understand each other and things like that. But absolutely fine, and I really hope this is the catalyst for getting 40K across the UK back up and running.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I really think that, we can smash it going forward, and there's going to be plenty more of Vanguard Tactics series events. We're actually planning event number 2 already. So, yeah, more to come on
Excellent.
that. The last one sold out in, I think, 10 days. And bear in mind, we only gave people 2 weeks' notice to the actual event. And a lot of people said, oh, you won't sell it out, you won't sell tickets. But yeah, we did. We had a waiting list, and I think the next one will sell even quicker now. So, especially when they see the video testimonials and the videos that come out since that I'm literally editing at the moment. But anyway, so that's number 1. Number 2.
So we'll talk about. I learned a lot about secondary selection.
Yep. So now with obviously 9th edition, you've got your primary, and then you've got your secondary missions, haven't you? Which you have to pick
Yeah.
3 from. You can score up to 45 points for those secondaries. But yeah, what would you kind of say in terms of compared to the ITC, what people were familiar from before? How much harder are these secondaries to score?
Well, in our playtesting, we're testing it out, playing this afresh, and it's finding it very difficult to max out these primaries, and I still do. But what's encouraging from the results from the weekend is that it can be done.
Yeah.
Good players can still max out. And I'm sure that's an element of their list design and their overall strategy for the game. So those are encouraging signs. And these are just the first pass of the secondaries as well. So, we can all look forward to. They've already mentioned that codexes will get additional ones as well, but the next chapter approved will also bring more. So they are a lot compared to the ITC and what we were used to. They are a lot more difficult to max out, but you can still score a reasonable amount and still win the games without having to max them out either.
Yeah.
And and you can look to deny your opponent points and things like that. So I was winning games by 2 or 3 points by really calculating, managing my scoreboard to just get those wins and max and nicking objectives from opponents at the right time, etc., and things like that.
Yeah, and that's a real skill to have that foresight of being able to look 3 turns ahead and go, okay, I can deny you X points, then I can score here, I can stop you getting that one. And that's something we actually teach on our academy, and really help people manage their own scoreboard to make sure that they can plan an effective and winning game strategy, because that really changes depending on the matchup. Like, I managed to win a game against an incredible Tau player, and this the what is that he's actually one of the players that's made the LVO numerous times in terms of top 8. He's named William Albez, and we had a fantastic game. But I won that game with, I think, like 70 something points, like mid 70s. But against his list, it was really hard to get the secondaries off. But against somebody else, I was achieving like 95 or 100 off their list. So you really need to be able to play to the strengths of your army, and also understand what secondaries are good to pick against that particular archetype of list you're going against. And hopefully in the section Better the Meta, we can really help you in terms of determining the right secondaries to pick against those archetype lists. And then also in our third part of the show, which is our army analysis, we can go into, if you're using the same faction as we're talking about, then what secondaries you can pick to help you, because there's always that different crossover, isn't it? What secondaries you pick in that your army scores well, and then what secondaries does your opponent hemorrhage and give up?
Yeah, so I think with my towel list, I think I picked the same secondary in every game, which was While We Stand We Fight. That was from the No Mercy No Respite category. But then following that, against most opponents, I couldn't really pick a kill secondary unless it was tank heavy, or if or if it was a horde. So I couldn't really pick any of those. I didn't have any psychers, so I couldn't pick from that category. And I didn't have very many infantry units, so that limited my options from shadow operations. So I was kind of almost forced into the battlefield supremacy, where recon and line breaker sits and domination. No Mercy, No Respite, and the mission secondary.
Yeah.
So that's because of my list build. And if my opponent didn't have any vehicles or anything, or lots of characters, I was struggling to pick one from the kill category, which I want to pick from the kill category, being a Tau player. So I found I was a little bit limited in my choices. But at this stage, I've got to build a list that I can maximise the objectives that I can score. So being the recon, being the While We Stand We Fight, the mission ones, etc.
So what sort of keywords are going to work well to score, high points on the secondaries? So take away the killing ones, obviously, because
Yeah.
there's not much we can do about that, because it literally depends who you go up against.
Yes, that's matchup dependent.
If you play against Custodes, they don't really give up any, right? So, which is what one of the strongest things about Custodes in this new meta of 9th edition, is that they don't give up secondaries very easily, compared to like the guard player I played turn 1. I'm just going to go, okay, bring it down, because you've got a million tanks. So if I kill some of them, then I'm going to get 15 points flat out. It's not going to be a problem. But so in terms of then, what sort of keywords or types should we be looking at, Jack, to really help us score on these secondaries for maybe those parts that aren't as obvious?
Yeah, so well, you're looking at the infantry keyword is absolutely critical in maximizing your options of secondaries that you can select, which is a very powerful ability when you come to meet an opponent, is having the options to take these, because all the shadow operations, which are the action related secondaries, are all done by infantry units.
Yeah.
And lots of the missions specific ones are also restricted to infantry as well.
So you're looking at things like raise the banners.
Yes,
You
investigate sites.
investigate sites. And I'd like to add a little bit more to that. Not only infantry, the reason why I put infiltrators in my list is because I have the ability with the infiltrators to put them in the midboard so they can start doing an action turn 1. So if I go first, I can investigate site where I've got no enemy within 6. So straight away, big 3 points on the board straight away.
Yeah, and it's having the infantry units that you don't mind not shooting or doing anything. While you're doing action, you can't. The only thing you can do is swing back in combat if you are charged.
Yeah.
So it's having those the element of MSU in your list to have 5 intercessors or 5 fire warriors or 5 minimum squads that you don't mind just sitting back on an objective, doing an action, score and ticking your scoreboard over.
Yeah, and all they've got to do is sometimes just stay there, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
absolutely. Like, I think that's one of the things that are really important. And also, for example, the character keyword, although you could have an infantry model, some of them, aren't allowed to be done by characters and others are. So, again, you need to really read deep into the secondaries to think, what units in my army can achieve this? And I think even writing down all the secondaries, and this is going to be a task I'm actually going to teach on the academy, is writing down all the secondaries and then writing down the units next to it which your army can score reliably every single turn.
oh, definitely. That's certainly an exercise that I have been doing since the weekend, and looking to modify my list is right. How can I make sure I get more secondaries? And in most cases, that will also equal more primaries.
Yeah.
So that's a critical analysis that I'm currently doing.
And then also like making sure you know what actions you can and cannot do. Like you can't, for example, advance and then do an action. That was something that caught me out at the weekend.
Yeah, yeah, and it
Um,
turns characters' auras off while the
yeah.
action's being undertaken.
So it's really important to know what actions can and can't you do, and also obviously making sure you know what units are going to do what. So which units have got good maneuverability to be able to get around and get you recon. What units can, and when we go over my army at the end of this, my Ultramarines army, I'm going to tell you exactly how I built my list in the way that I did to score some really big points and do well on my secondaries, because that was something I really did well at, was scoring secondaries. So next up then, leading on from that, is building lists around your secondaries. So what sort of things have you been looking at since this, or what problems did you face, Jack, with your list that you felt actually need to build around that now?
So I really felt the lack of infantry. But looking at a Tau's perspective, I don't like the Tau infantry because they're not strong and resilient, and they're quite vulnerable. So I think as it stands at the moment, I think I've still got to avoid taking infantry to rely on those infantry-based secondaries. So I've got to look at the different categories. So in particular, looking at recon, line breaker, and domination. So that battlefield supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've looked at, I've dropped a little bit of firepower. So I've dropped like a broadside from a list, and I've added in 2 piranhas. So piranhas are 16-inch move vehicles, light skimmers that have fly. Their damage output is very low, but they're very quick. They also have 2 gun drones attached to them, which can disembark and form their own unit.
Do they have the
So
infantry keyword?
no, not drones.
No.
But what I can do, on turn 1, zoom these 2 piranhas into different quarters of the board or into my opponent's deployment zone. Next turn, disembark the drones. All of a sudden, I've got 2 to 4 units in my opponent's deployment zone to score the line breaker.
Yeah.
My list is definitely reliant on While We Stand We Fight, having triple Riptide in there.
Yeah.
They're very difficult to take down. And then what I need to do as part of my review is look at all the different mission secondaries to make sure that I can then compete on each one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same question back to you.
Yeah, so I think how I've kind of built my list with the Ultramarines, I put in 3 units of Inceptors in my list. 3 mans, literally just to drop in to get me line breaker or engage on all fronts. So that was kind of one I would always normally take. It'd be one or the other. And the great thing about 3 units of Inceptors is that they're quite durable, being toughness 5, 3 plus save and 3 wounds. And because I had 3 units, I built in the redundancy, so you have to kill 2 of the units in order to stop me from scoring line breaker. So you have to actually commit a fair amount of firepower or combat over in that way to try and deny me those points. So that was something that I found to work really, really well. And then obviously with strategic reserves, I could put the Eradicators in there as well. A lot of people ask me why take a Phobos Lieutenant, and the reason for that, he is the cheapest character I could take that gave me a non-named character keyword along with the deep strike ability for free, so I don't have to spend any CPs to put him in deep strike, and he can come on anywhere on the table. So for me, he could drop down with the Inceptors. I can use the Relic Seal of Oath on a unit that it could even be a unit that they've got in their deployment zone. I just need to kill it off. It could be a unit of troops. In the Relic Seal of Oath allows me to reroll all hits and wounds. So he can come down in an area and literally just give all the rerolls in the world to that unit of Inceptors to just clear off that troop unit on an objective, and now I'm going to guarantee getting the hold more every single turn, and then I should win as long as I'm winning the primary and can do my best on the secondaries. So, really having those key elements in the list there. And then I made sure that the other things was, I've got really durable characters. So Tigerius was one of them, and also Calgas are there. While we stand, we fight. I should get 10, maybe even 15, depending on if I can keep the other sort of lesser resilient characters alive. And as long as I play the game well and protect them with my aggressors and things, I should be. And then I had like a warlord trait which allows me to heroically intervene in things to protect them even further. So typically the secondaries I was taking was the line breaker or engage on all fronts. While we stand, we fight, and then either raise the banners, because then I can use my intercessors to good effect raising banners, or my infiltrators to go in for investigate sites in the midboard, or maybe even sometimes the mission one. But they would typically be my hot picks that I would again score anywhere from 10 to 15 on every single game, which was consistent enough to win me more matches than I lost.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
So what were some of the number 4, mate, on our top 10 is standout units? What were some of the standout units of the weekend? You name one, I'll name one.
Okay, I will name Custode Terminators.
Okay, is it the Alaris Terminators? Is that right?
Well, I played both forms of them.
Okay.
I don't quite know the names between the two units, but it's kind of irrelevant because it wasn't their damage output that I struggled with, and I think these are Custodians are going to be a gatekeeper list moving forward, but it's the resilience that they can easily get access to with their new stratagems.
Yeah.
Mainly being ignoring AP 1 and 2. My list had 3 guns that were AP 3 and higher, so that was a massive problem for me. And then the ability to turn off rerolls as well.
Yeah, they can turn off all rerolls, so whether that's reroll to wound, reroll to hit. They've obviously got transhuman as well, I think.
Yeah, so you could drop transhuman into the mix as well. So they can actually dump CPs into individual units to make them very, very tough to kill, especially the Terminators in my list build. When I'm shooting toughness 5 models with a 2-up armor save, 4-up invuln with 4 wounds each, I just wasn't killing them quick enough.
No, and they can obsec, can't they?
Yes, the whole Custodes list is then obsec, and they've got access to the 3-inch charge from the banner as well.
Yeah, who also gives them -1 to hit.
Yes, for me, they're the standout unit of the weekend. There's quite a few units of those across the tournament. And I think you're certainly, when you're building your list, you'll need to develop strategies to deal with them.
Yeah. So no, I'd completely agree. So my standout unit that I thought was fantastic was the Eradicators.
Oh boy, they're good.
Yeah, so I got in my list I had 3 units of Eradicators, going with my whole Ultramarine Gravis theme.
Yeah.
And I found them to be exceptional at the weekend. And then I was also on the receiving end of Alex Harrison's Eradicators, and he had long range marksman on them, and he played it super well in our game because he had 27-inch range and I've got 24. So I had the banner, so it allows me to shoot when I die. And he was like, "Cool, I'm staying 25 inches away, Steve. You all right with that?" I was like, "Well, I'm not all right with that, but there's not much I can do about it."
Yeah,
and he literally, yeah, and that D6 damage is just brutal. And you were on the receiving end of it as well, right?
Yeah, game 1, I wasn't even warmed up, and it completely slipped my mind. They're +1 to wound in Salamanders, so they're wounding my whole army on 2s. And we're taking those shield drones. I felt the pain. I felt the pain in that game.
Yeah.
But Alex played it exceptionally well. But yeah, they are an incredible unit.
Yeah, no, really, really good. And the ability to put them in outflank or
Absolutely.
strategic reserves is brilliant. And it's what, like 2 CPs to put 3 units there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it's absolute bargain, isn't it?
it's brilliant. So you can come on from any edge, 24-inch range, plus obviously within 6 of the board edge. You've got literally 30 inches from um, any edge, really. He's amazing on the new size board. So
And it's difficult to zone that out.
yeah,
You know, all the board edges and the middle of the board as well. Like there'll always be a pocket where they could turn up.
in zoning out a combat unit to a certain area of the board is a good strategy, but you can't really zone something out which has got a 24-inch range because it will still shoot you off the table.
Absolutely. Well, that's the. I think that's moving on to our next one. Is about strategic reserves, isn't it?
Yeah, so making use of strategic reserves, obviously, one of those things I think you're going to say is massively underrated, right?
Yeah, and I haven't found my feet with it just yet. I've started to get a bit of a feel for it, but I think once people get the head around ninth edition in full, I think it's going to be a very powerful, effective way to help manage and win games. So I used it. Well, I played Alex in game one. He had the Relic Scorpius, and I had a unit of broadsides in my list. I know he had the access to +1 to wound, so he'd be wounding them on twos. So I was very concerned that he could shoot into them and potentially wipe them off the board. So I put them into reserve straight away
Mm-hmm.
and brought them on. I had another example when I was playing on a table where I didn't have enough ruins to hide all 3 Riptides. So I put 2 in reserve, 3 CP, absolute bargain.
Yeah.
And then I could bring them on. My opponent's got to worry about where these 2 Riptides are going to turn up and then draw an angle which I'll never be able to get to if I was starting on my board edge.
Yep.
So I think for me, in particular for Tau, I think that's going to be a very good way to get around the corners of the board, get the firing angles, make sure you get your engage at all fronts, is making good use of strat reserves.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's really how you can start to play that. Because, for example, line break is scored at the end of your turn, isn't it? Engage on all fronts is
Yeah.
scored at the end of your turn, so it's quite nice to bring those on. I'm really rating, for example, Scions in a guard list. Simply just to go, cool, drop one in this turn, drop another one in another turn, drop another one in, another turn, and just drop them in as you need them, which I think is great for, getting you those all important secondary points. And
But
also the way that deployment works now, and this is actually kind of our next point, but also tied in really nicely. Deployment's changed, and I actually think for the better. I was worried it might take too long, but actually in the games I played, there was never a time issue with deployment. And the you go, I go deployment really brings in an element of skill. Making sure you're putting down your characters in the right place. You're, positioning your models in such a way where you're leaving room for inserting characters in the middle of holes or whatever it might be. Creating room for your right units to touch cover, which units you want to be obscured, which units you don't. And there's a real skill to that. And with that, knowing, okay, what am I going to put in strategic reserves in case I go second?
yeah, what I like about the strategic reserve steps, you do that before you put any models on the table as well, and you
Yeah.
both declare at the same time.
Yeah.
So you don't know what they're going to do, you don't know what you're going to do, and they don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a mind game, even before you even put a model on the table. So I think that's great. Yeah, I really enjoy the alternative deployment style, and you start to look to try and bait your opponent into deploying on one side or whatever, and all that kind of all those kind of mind games that you get, and those strategic decisions. I think so. I think it's brilliant.
And that's where it really brings back in those sort of strong
Redeployment.
redeployment strategies. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I nearly did something in my final game, which I then decided not to do, but I really regret not doing it actually. But being able to put my infiltrators in the middle of the board and then going, cool, I'm going to redeploy them back and hide them.
Yeah.
To stop you getting an early charge on them or something, or because Ultramarines can redeploy 3 units for 2 CPs. And I think I use that literally every game, just to have that flexibility of repositioning potentially a mistake or repositioning for an advantage if I was going first, or repositioning if I'm going second and I want a bit more durability. So I really, really like that mechanic of, the deployment, who goes first. I'm a big fan.
No, you touched on the Ultramarine strategy. We'll cover that later on, actually.
Yeah. But in terms of you, Jack, weren't the biggest fan, were you, when you read about the sort of alternating and first turn mechanic? But how do you feel about it now?
No, when I first read it, I thought it was a step backwards from where we got to with the ITC. And even in my first few games, I wasn't enjoying it. But actually, I'm probably about 20 plus games into it now. I really do enjoy it. Yes, you don't know who's going first, but then both players don't know that. So you've kind of got to, you either play, both players typically will play defensively, or you may look to play aggressively and take the risk. And it does bring, as you said, all those redeployment abilities back into the game, which were taken out of it by knowing who goes first. So I really enjoy that, and I think it gives a nice edge to armies like Aldari, Ultramarines, Orcs have got ability to do it as well.
Harlequins, yeah, yeah, love all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, nice. So next point then is we've spoke about the first turn mechanic. We've spoke about obviously strategic reserves. Next one is fixed pre-game relics, warlord traits, powers, ability, stratagems that you have to play all pre-game. Now, just to caveat this doesn't include strategic reserves. That is a bit different. This is more
yes, yeah.
army roster stuff. You have to declare everything now, and it has to be on your roster. What was your initial, be honest with the guys, what was your initial thoughts when you first saw that?
My initial thoughts is I didn't like it. I quite like that toolbox that you get at the beginning of the game once you know who you're playing. To pick and choose, make subtle. You can make subtle adjustments to how your army operates based on your opponent. So I quite like that as an option to do. But my opinions is changing on it. You've got to then, for me, take the you've really got to choose and pick the right relics and right warlord traits to like plug your army's weaknesses.
Yeah,
So the example for me, I took the right relic ion cannon. I won't talk about that anymore because I think Stephen will slap my wrist because I love that thing. It's a very good weapon. And then the other one I took was on one of my ghost kills to block deep strike within 12. Knowing the fact that Custodes were going to be a thing, it stops Blood Angels getting the 3d6 charge on me, Dark Angels, and I can't afford for a unit to come and deep strike, potentially behind a ruin, and then charge me. So I can use that ghost kill to block off those areas. So that if they want to deep strike, they have to charge the front where they get the full brutal overwatch.
yeah, because cannot overrides can. So if something cannot deep strike within 12, even if you can arrive within 3, for example, Grey Knights, Custodes, Gene Stealer Cult can all arrive within
Yeah,
3, then obviously you basically stop that from happening because cannot overrides can, which I know is a very common question. But yeah, I think you're right. Like one of the modules that myself and Joe are working on at the moment for the academy is how to write an army list effectively, and we're actually going to release this module as a standalone module because we think it's that important that people really understand how to write army lists. A lot of people buy army lists off the internet or they, just copy whatever meta list is out there. But actually, I really want to teach people. So this is going to be a standalone module we're going to release in due time. It will be paid for. It won't be, a huge amount, but I think the education that you're going to learn from it is going to be really important. We're going to teach you everything about building a list around your secondaries in a lot more detail, how to read your codex properly. But one of the things that we talk about in that is when you're looking for your key units of that codex, army, faction, whatever it might be, then when you're looking at your warlord traits, powers, buffs, and abilities, do you, number one, go down the route of accentuating and adding more value to your already powerful units? Or do you, number two, plug holes to your hardest matchups? And again, in that module, we teach you how to find your hard matchups so you know what warlords, traits, and relics to take because you know what's going to shut you down. And then that leads you on to our next bit, which is all about asking the right questions pre-game to make sure you can know and understand what your opponent's army list actually does to you and what you need to watch out for. So in my list, Seal of Oath Relic was brilliant because my whole army is pretty much strength 4, strength 5. So to have reroll wounds on a target is brilliant because I can just come down in with those Inceptors, for example, and just nuke something off the table. And I wouldn't always just put Seal of Oath on the toughest target. I would actually sometimes put it on a unit I just need to be dead. And that could be from a gameplay perspective, whether I need it to go against William the Tau player. I made a huge mistake and I put it on a Riptide. I should just put it on a unit of crew or something in the backfield, or on a character that I knew I was going to be able to get range to at some point in the game, just to clear him off that objective. But being able to bring on that guy, putting it on 3 Custody Guardians who are on objective, because when I come down with 36 shots from my Inceptors rerolling or hits and wounds, they should clear off a 3-man unit, and then the Custody players thinking, oh, do I want to turn off rerolls just for a 3-man unit?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the situation. One of the other relics I'll talk about later, but you can see how I start to plug those gaps a little bit more. But I'm agreement with you. I think it builds. It really then rewards the player that knows their list the best and also knows the repetitions and also understands why they've took those warlord traits in relics or powers and abilities in their list, rather than just copying the top one off the internet and trying to guess on the day what's what. And it also cuts down on speed as well. On time, sorry.
It forces harder decisions.
Yeah.
When you're writing your list, and it can become a very important part of your playtesting when you're preparing for an event as well. Have I got the right warlord trait? Do I need another relic, etc., etc.? So it's an interesting change, which it just adds a little bit additional different flavour to the game.
And it's a bit more thematic, rather than having, Billy Bob, who's a chapter master game 1, and then he's not a chapter master game 2, and he's a chapter master again in game 3. So having all that stuff just written down, these are veteran intercessors. Like, you pay them CPs for those. They don't just get demoted game 2 because you don't need it. So really, really actually, again, it's adjusting to change is really hard, but you just have to let it embed.
Yeah.
There is that embedding process, like with all things. Like, I teach people how to change their habits for fitness and nutrition, and I'll tell you this right now, people do not like change, right?
No, definitely not me.
So you just have to give it time and build rewarding habits, and reinforce that then with success, and be enabling people to be able to see the long game and see the benefits. Or maybe it's a pain reduction, so you can sort of reward yourself in 2 ways. Like, what can help you avoid pain, i.e., losing your whole army turn 1, or getting overwatched off the table, or what can bring you more success, or you're going to win more games, and that's something again we can help you with. So anyway, next one is how gun lines are meant to work in 9th. People are talking combat's dead, Jack. I've been told multiple times on the Blood Angel chat, Steve, you don't know what you're talking about. Combat's dead. Gun lines are the way forward. What are your thoughts?
Well, a traditional gun line, which stands at the back of the board, shoots you for 3 turns, and then scoring kill more, and then late game scoring hold more, just isn't going to work. In 9th edition, you need to be getting around the board in different places, getting on the objectives, getting your secondary points, which are primarily based on ball control and objectives and getting around the board. So I was struggling with it. We were play testing, weren't we, down in the studio a couple of weeks before the event, and I was a bit disheartened with it, to be honest. I found it really, my favourite faction. I thought, I can't, I struggle to compete with these, and it is a challenge. But you can make it work, and I think it's picking the right units and the right blend between outright firepower and units to be able to grab the objectives and a bit of mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I touched on it earlier with making good use of strategic reserves, to pop up. It could be a tank, or a big monster or big shooting threat somewhere where your opponent is not going to know where it's going to come from. Keep them guessing. And then you're stringing out your units so they can't just come and charge you at a castle. You're all over the board. So
yeah,
I think it's an evolution of style and strategy. But I think heavy shooting armies will still be able to work.
Yeah, but only if you kind of play them aggressively and you get them moving around the table, not just I stand here and shoot, because otherwise, like you said, you're not going to score any points.
Yeah, and obviously the rules changes have supported that with being able to move tanks and monsters without suffering the penalty. You can shoot in combat if someone is to tag you, so it's not the worst case if someone does get into combat with you. It's obviously the change to the fly keywords obviously hurt Tau, but then armies like Imperial Guard got much better, which to be fair is an equal balance because the fly keyword was overpowered previously.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, I'd agree completely. So, next one is making use of the objective secured keyword. So people have said, "Oh, you don't need troops anymore." What do you think?
I could say I could tell you now. You really do need OBSEC in your list. It's such strong ability. In particular, Custode is getting it across the entire army. Maybe a bit of a problem because it's very strong when you go into that matchup. But it's like the random abilities, like the Salamanders can put OBSEC on a random unit and things like that. It's really when you can send a unit, if it has OBSEC, to just quickly grab an objective which you think is safe. I have a big scary Riptide or my whole castle sitting on an objective, and then someone brings in a shield captain within 3 inches. It doesn't matter how many models I got there. If they're not OBSEC, it's gone, and all of a sudden you're losing your primary points.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those things that you don't want, that unit of even like aggressors, for example, sat on an objective, and all of a sudden, a little 5-man Cabalite squad runs over and goes, "No, this is ours now. Cheers. See you
Yeah,
later. That banner you've got raised is ours. No more points for that. We now get the hold more." And for an army that's very quick, like for example, Venoms and Cabalites or troops and Star Weavers that can just run out onto objectives with very low pointed units to basically go, "Cool, that's contested, that's contested, that's contested. I hold 2, I get hold more." And you can literally deny your opponent scoring 20 odd points on the primary, and it's unlikely that they're going to outscore you by 20 points on the secondary. So you're going to win that game just by going, "Cool, going to feed a unit out there, I'm going to feed a unit onto that objective." And that's where having OBSEC goes, is going to be really powerful. And I really hope Knights get reworked to all have OBSEC.
yeah, I would agree with that. They certainly do need it.
I really think Knights need OBSEC and to count for 10 models.
hmm I think that'll be a fair change for them. I think in this whole topic area, it shows the importance of taking a balanced list. You can't just take an army full of heavy hitters that sit at the back and shoot your opponent away, or a big combat blob that goes in and kills your opponent. You need elements that can deal with your opponent's units, and then different elements that can go and run around the board scoring objectives.
Yeah, like the Boogeyman list of like 8th edition was like the Possess Bomb, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm like, "Cool, you can hold that one objective, mate. I'll have the other 5."
yeah, exactly. The way the possess bomb work, you had to have a massive load of screen in front of it as well. So not only is the possess bomb soaking up a load of points, but it's all the other units and characters it takes to buff it. So it's just a ball, isn't it?
Yeah,
That can only be in one place.
yeah. And then a fast-moving army is just going to dodge around it.
Yeah,
Same for AdMech. The word out there that their firepower is absolutely devastating, but which it is. But if they're not moving out onto the objectives, all you need to do is sit and basically take it, and you'll still win that game. So yeah, it's one of those things that it's going to be really important to make sure. And I'm going to talk about my Ultramarines list later. Why that worked so well for me, and why I maximised that word OBSEC to my advantage. And then finally, just the size of the board. Are you a fan or not?
yeah, it's growing on me. It's growing on me now. It's to be fair, I didn't even think about it at the weekend. It'd become the new normal.
Yeah.
So I kind of forgotten the old size, and it made for a great game. You're straight into the action. I'm happy with it now.
Yeah, and all of our games were the first 2 rounds were 3 hours to give a little bit, people a little bit more time. We had a couple of people struggle to get to 5 turns without assistance, but we made sure everybody did in the end. But then all the other games, 2.5 hours, were fine, and I think the newer board edge really helps that. So no, I'm a big fan of it. I love it. I think it's great for combat armies. The more I play the edition, the more I'm enjoying it. My opinion on the game going into this event has certainly changed by playing 6 quality games, and I'm enjoying it even more. Like I said, change is difficult, whether it's mission pack or your units or your points or whatever. But I absolutely love this weekend, and I've got really really high hopes for what 9th edition brings us in the future. It's kind of like we're playing index missions. You know how we were playing indexes with codexes for a while?
Yeah.
We're kind of playing index missions in a way. I feel like there's going to be a lot more coming soon. So as
Oh,
that
absolutely.
when we start getting the new books in codexes, it's all going to get flushed out, and then we're going to really see the pure flavor. But all I would say to people is, do not get disappointed with it. If you feel like, oh, but it's not 8th, or oh, but it's not ITC, oh, but it's not, I like the whole turn deployment. Give it time. And really let it embed. We don't want these little groups of people sort of playing ITC again or whatever. And bear in mind, I was a massive, massive fan of the ITC. I got that nailed and absolutely locked down. I really did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had such big wins with the Blood Angels if I hadn't done. And it's been an adjustment, but good players will still be at the top. You'll still make the better calls. You'll still make the right strategic moves. Trust that, and you'll still do very, very well. It's a new learning experience for us all. So that's our top 10, mate. Should we move on to Better the Meta?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, we're going to take a quick short break, and then we'll be back with Better the Meta. Welcome back from the break, guys. And in this segment of the show called Better the Meta, this is where we're going to help you analyze what's particularly strong at the moment, and then give you some strategies and tactics that you can put in place to help you beat that meta. So, what was one of the most populated armies at the weekend, Jack?
I think it was by far the Custodes were very popular at this event.
Why do you think they've been popular for this event in particular? Name a few of the reasons.
So they had a very they had a great psychic awakening
Yep.
for the new rules. The way that detachments are built means they got additional CPs to use the incredible stratagems that they have access to, and they did very well with the points adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and they played the mission really well, right? Like you said earlier, OBSEC, durable.
Yeah.
They can deep strike. They've got bikes that are super quick. They can get around the board. They don't have the horde keywords, or they don't. You don't see 11 models, so they don't get affected by blast. They're not really affected by morale and combat attrition. They don't really care if you overwatch them because they're so durable. So all the aspects that have changed they never really wrapped in trap much anyway, I would say, because they didn't have the models to do it. So a lot of the things that were lost from some of the armies in 8th, they didn't lose. And also, let's be honest, they're a cheaper army to get to the table because you don't need that many models, and a quick spray, wash in a few bits of details, and you've got an army good to go.
Absolutely.
Even a quality painter like yourself, Jack, could get this army to the tabletop in no time whatsoever.
It's a very accessible army to quickly throw together and take to a tournament, and knowing the fact that you've got a good set of rules to back yourself to do reasonably well at that event.
Yeah, and you literally need 2 books, Custodes book and your Psychic Awakening, you're good to go.
Happy days. No full library to take with you.
And also, a small army box you could probably put all your models in a lunchbox and be good to go, right? So, that's going to travel very easily. And these are actually things you need to consider when going to an event, is how well your army travels and stuff. But anyway, so let's go over the Custodes, some of the top units that we've typically seen. You played them twice, I played them twice. What were some of the things that you saw on a regular basis?
So there's generally a bit of an archetype that's kind of forming to the list that I definitely noticed in the 2 games that I played. So is the Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle.
Yep.
With the 3-up invuln save and rerollable charges relic or warlord trait, and then the 5-up feel no pain relic or warlord trait.
Yep.
Who would then be upgraded to a captain commander, either for the the consolidation shenanigans, or for additional 2 wounds, or the CP farm.
Yep.
So he'll be in every Custodes list that you'll see, and then there'll be some minimum troop squads typically with storm shields to be really resilient objective holders. Then the Telemon certainly appeared in the 2 lists that I played with the banner. So and then usually a big block of Terminators and a big block of
Bikes.
the bikes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's generally the build. Obviously, different players will have slightly different adjustments on the type of Terminators, the number of bikes, or or the types of troops and things like that. But that's typically what you'd expect from a Custodes list.
Yeah, I would agree. I saw exactly the same in the games that I played and played against. So yeah, whether it was like a Telemon or just more bikes or whatever, yeah, but you're pretty much spot on there. Your 3 units of 3 Guardians, Shield Captain or 2, or maybe another Captain on foot, for example. Trajan might pop his head up. So yeah, some of those things were definitely there. So all of the models have OBSEC pretty much, and they've got the ability to come in from reserve with the Terminators. They can come in 3 inches away. They've all got a 2-up save, 1+ if they're in cover. They've got a 4+ invulnerable save. They've got 3 to 4 wounds, or even 5 wounds, I think, per model. Are the bikes 4 or 5? I think they're 4, aren't they?
They're 4, yeah.
Yeah, and the Custodes Terminators are 4 as well, aren't they?
Yes.
So yeah, 3 to 4 wounds. And they can turn off all rerolls. They can put transhumans, so you can only wound them on 4s. They've got ability to shoot at characters that I didn't know about. That caught me off guard.
The banner makes a -1 to hit.
Yeah, -1 to hit. So what sort of things do we need to be? Or let me ask you from your perspective, from the Tau player there. What were some of the things that you put in place to to do well against the Custodes? Did you win both your games against them? Did you lose one, win one? What were your results against the Custodes with your Tau?
So I lost both, unfortunately.
Okay.
But in my first game, I lost by a considerable margin because I allowed the Custodes to pin me in a corner.
Yep.
But then I reflected on the game and realised, why on earth to let that happen? What I could push him into a corner. So on the second game, that's exactly what I did. And I lost that by 2 points.
Wow.
The reason I lost that game is that the Custodian Terminators bounced my whole army off and shooting, because it was a lack of AP 3 and higher. So when the stratagem was dropped to ignore AP 1 and 2, he was then making 2-up saves, and the roll did spike, but you'd have to expect that with a 2-up save.
Yeah.
So I was really happy with my from my first game losing considerably to then almost nicking the win. So I made a lot of progress and starting to develop strategies to deal with them. I think reflecting on that second game where I nearly won, what I need to do with my current Tau build is to push the Terminators to deep strike in their deployment zone and then leave them to it. Don't interact with them. They're slow. Their shooting output isn't great, so I don't have to go and touch them and then sweep up and destroy everything else on the board.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And actually, for me, I played 2 games against Custodes. I won them both, but with my second game, it was easier than my first game in terms of the win. Now, that was actually, there was a couple of key dice rolls that really didn't go well for my opponent. So, like, he failed a charge. He failed, like, I think an 8-inch charge with his bikes, which is a 50-50, isn't it, if that happens? Even with the reroll, he failed it again. So, yeah, it was unfortunate that he didn't make that charge. There was another charge in which he failed, but we reviewed it back because he actually failed his 3-inch charge.
What?
Yeah, he failed the 3-inch charge.
You lucky boy.
But we reflected on it, and actually, if he would have made it, he would have actually put himself in a worse position because he would have been out of cover.
Okay. Yeah.
So the 3 Eradicators he actually killed anyway with his Shield Captain.
Yeah.
So we by coming down in the ruins, he still got the cover save, which meant I needed to put a lot more firepower into them. So yeah, that was one thing that actually went in his favor in the end. But yeah, so some of the things that I did, I played against Adam, who was one of our VT players and also referees. He ended up coming third at the weekend, and against him, what I did was turn one, I pushed out as far as I possibly can. So I basically moved and advanced everything. I just shot something I could kill, just to start removing models, start removing threats. And turn one, I picked up a dreadnought of his, and then I picked up a Vindicare. That was now the closest model because of the character rules have changed. He was no longer being covered by because of Lookout Sir. So that was one thing. So I picked up the Vindicare, which basically meant while we stand, we fight for me. I didn't have to worry too much about. He's going to have a much harder job killing my characters. And then what I just really focused on was picking the right secondaries to make sure I was scoring mine and just try and deny him his. So he took, as soon as I found out he took Linebreaker, I knew exactly where he wanted to bring his deep strikers in. And all I then needed to do was just zone out the board. So that's what I did. That was a big change for me. Zone out that board. And that was my focus of that match was I'm going to use my Inceptors, all my units, make sure everything's like 18 inches apart to make sure he can't come in on the board. And when he did come down with his Telemon that was in reserve and his Terminators that were in reserve and the jump pack the jump pack Forge World units were also in reserve. He could only come down in his own deployment zone.
And I think that's a key strategy, and it's a weakness of the Custodes because their footprint on the board is usually relatively low because most of the big units go to deep strike.
Yeah.
So that gives you an opportunity to get out the board, take it. Their shooting isn't great, so it's unlikely to clear all your screens in time for when they need to drop these killing units in.
Yeah.
So you can make them deep strike in an unfavourable position.
Yeah, and I'd zoned out the two middle objectives, and also he couldn't get on my two, so I was pretty much free to do what I wanted. He did bring his bikes in, but that's where Null Zone came in handy and really did some work there. Calgar went and punched the Shield Captain to death, so that he was an absolute hero in that match. I think he killed the Telemann as well. So Calgar was really bringing me home the big points. But yeah, that was one thing I certainly did and then also making sure that I am targeting different units to bait out that rerolls.
I was literally about to say that was my next point is making sure you get a couple of units lined up so you can then switch target once that stratagem is dropped.
Yeah, or even with the first unit, split fire it.
Yeah.
To go, right, which one are you going to do it on that one? Cool. And then I switch over to this one. That was one thing that I did a lot of to really bait that one out. So all their defensive stratagems are played on a unit, not on one of your units. So you can, a bit like how we used to do it with what was that?
Knights.
With the rotate. Yeah. Exactly, similar principle. So bait it out, and it's all about threat saturation, which is a module you're actually teaching on the academy, isn't it? It's all about threat saturation and redundancy, and putting that on the table in such a way that you're making sure that you're thinking turns ahead to go, okay, in turn 3 I'm going to set this up so he'll be here roughly, I'm going to put these threats onto these 2 units, I'm going to kill one of them rather than none. Because if you just go out in piecemeal, then one unit he can buff up and it won't die, and you'll just really, really struggle to take it down. So and then when you've got the Custodes in combat and things, doing everything you can to heroically intervene or fight twice or interrupt and things and make him worry about the interrupt. So having a combat and this is where I think my list probably did better than yours against the Custodes. I've got a combat punch, so I can charge into combat with my aggressors and Calgar or whatever. So if he charges one unit, the other unit can spend 2 CPs, interrupt and kill it. So he's wasting an entire unit there.
I think it's an important thing. When they turn off the rerolls, that's per the phase, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you could bait out on a shooting phase. They spent, that you're making them waste resources. Against me, against a shooting army, it's very effective because I only have this one phase, so that unit is going to survive. More likely that entire shooting phase. Just one thing that I kind of learned: the Shield Captain's damage output isn't particularly great. He's just very survivable. So actually, in future, I don't mind receiving a charge from that Shield Captain. In my games, I found like I was running away from him a little bit. But if I get I'm not too bothered if he wants to charge a Riptide or charge a Ghost Keel, because he's unlikely to kill it in one round,
Yeah.
and then it's tied up. It can't then fall back and charge something else, like my Fire Warriors, which he'll clear up and take away my OBSEC.
Yeah.
So getting those first couple of games against them, I certainly learned a lot on that and how to develop strategies to beat them.
Yeah, and I found with the just mass fire, people do roll ones and twos, and you do slowly chip through the armor saves if you've got a -1 or a -2, but high volume like my aggressors were, slowly but surely just picking up
Hell yeah.
models.
Yeah.
And then the Eradicator's doing a great job at, again, it's actually quite a high volume of shots. I got 18 melter shots a turn. Some of them are going to land through their invulnerable save, and when they do, I'm using my reroll CP to reroll the damage so I can just plink off one completely, or making sure I'm using my movement correctly to go, okay, well, I'm going to advance to suffer the -1 to hit, but I know I'm re-rolling or I can roll 2 dice and pick the damage I want. That's more important than hitting on a 3 rather than a 4, so I wasn't scared of advancing.
And it's in that example, if they got the banner that makes you -1 to hit anyway,
Yeah.
you may as well advance, because you're going to be -1. So you might as well advance, get the double damage, and you only still take that -1 to hit. So
Yeah.
you lose nothing.
Absolutely, or I fall back from combat and shoot whatever with the Ultramarines, which is again why I think they did quite well against the Custodes. But yeah, and then also using my Inceptors well to bring them behind enemy lines. So on one of the games against a lad, what I did was I brought them back into his hammer and anvil deployment. So at the very back corner, they weren't to shoot anything. Literally, I just put all 3 units down in the corner. And I was like, well, if you want to get them, you can, but you've got to bring your shield captain back and get them.
Yeah, and that's something that I missed certainly in my last game, was something cheap to deep strike in his back corner.
Yeah.
Because it was on that game type where you held the objective until someone took you off it. Because they don't have many units, he secured it and then started moving forward. If I had a cheap unit just a deep strike in that back corner on his objective, he'd have nothing to swing around to go and deal with them.
Yeah, or he can't leave it, can he? He's got to zone you out.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's been a factor of my list development moving forward.
Yeah, so hopefully there's given you a few ideas, guys, on what you can do. Now, what sort of secondaries were you picking? What 3 secondaries did you pick against the Custodes?
So I was going for While We Stand We Fight, because my Riptides are very durable. They don't have much shooting output, and I could zone out the charges. So I was pretty confident I was going to get the 15 on there. And then in my first game, I took Line Breaker and scored none, but then I switched to Engage on all fronts. Because they don't have many units, you can give them the slip. You can jump around them and skirt around them, so you can get into those table quarters. And then I was taking the mission. Unfortunately, I was kind of forced into the mission secondary, because none of the kill point ones work. I can't take the action based ones because I don't have many infantry, and I'm not a psyker, so I was kind of forced into that mission objective on my third choice.
Yeah.
But most of them are quite good actually, and I was scoring reasonable points on them.
Yeah, so for me, I went for example, investigate sites, because I'm going to take the middle of the board with my army. And I went for behind enemy lines, like I said, just stick them in the backfield, like my Inceptors or my Deep Strike and stuff, because they're not really going to contribute much to the game, so they may as well get me 16 or no, or like 15. So 4 lots of 4, which then gets 16, but obviously maxed out at 15. Because that's worth a lot more to me than their damage output against the Custodes. Because you're not trying to table the Custode player; you're literally just trying to outmaneuver them.
Yes, and I think that's a very good way of summarising that. Is you can outmaneuver them. That's their weakness.
Yeah, you can show them where they can go for their deep strike if you're aggressive enough on your movement. Their damage, don't be afraid of their damage output. Protect your key units to get your While We Stand We Fight, and that's the game you need to play, and that's exactly what I did. Or in the other one, I went for Engage on all fronts, which again worked quite well for me. So yeah, definitely. Now, last segment of the show, army analysis. We're talking about my Ultramarine list, aren't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's it's pretty tasty, isn't it?
Yeah, so the reason why I took the Ultramarines and not the Blood Angels was I wanted a list that just everybody could look at and knew what it did, pretty much. One that didn't take me a huge amount of... Like, when I play the Blood Angels, it really takes a lot more energy out of me than it does playing the Ultramarines, because my ability to analyze threats with the Ultramarines, use the auras, use the movement, comes a lot more naturally than trying to excel in combat, which I do feel like is a harder phase of the game to get right. So that's why I took the a simpler army, because I knew I'd be refereeing as well and trying to manage an event. But the list I'm going to put in detail on the blog page, which is www.vanguardtactics.com/blog/S2EP1. But the key units I've got in HQ, we've got Tigerius with Null Zone, Might of Heroes, and Veil of Time. So Veil of Time gives me reroll charges and always fights first, which is massive in this edition. Null Zone was incredible against the Death Guard player. Tigerius himself killed a Demon Prince, which was massive. And also helped kill shield captains and things. So Null Zone was crucial. Then I've got the lieutenant in Phobos armor. I'm just going to call him that, Lobos now.
Yeah.
To, like I said, come on. He needs to be a non-named character to take the Relic Seal of Oath, and he can deep strike for free, which is great. And then I've got Marnius Calgar, who's an absolute beast. Gives me 2 CPs. Is my warlord, and he can farm CPs back. He gives me the rerolls to hits, and he's just so tanky. You just can't kill him, can you?
Oh no, he's an absolute beast too.
Like, he's probably just as durable as what's his face, Bobby G.
Yeah. Big claim.
I think he is.
Probably not far off.
Well, he halves all damage, you see. So, and he's got 8 wounds. He's a tough cookie with a 4-up invuln.
4-up invuln, okay. But I think he's great. I'd always pick Calgar over
Bobby G.
Girly Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I've got the Infiltrators and 2 units of Intercessors. Now, I'll be honest, didn't like the Intercessors at all. They're going.
Didn't do anything?
Just, they were 100 points of raise some banners.
Yeah.
And I could have actually done that with Scouts.
Until the Scouts get picked up by non-line of sight shooting. But
yeah, so
that's the advantage of the Primaris Marine, isn't it?
So if I'm going second, I can... well, if you know that they've got a lot of non-line of sight shooting, you just can put them in reserve and just bring them on turn 2.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then put your banners up with them. And then it doesn't matter then, because if they're dead, they're dead. You still got your banners up.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But the Infiltrators, if I can, I'm going to go 3 units of those, or maybe in Curses, because I'm not really worried about the 12-inch aura range. I'm mainly worried about the, the ability to investigate sites in the midboard and zone out a bit further.
Yeah, I certainly think Curses are very efficient for their points after the points adjustment.
So that was the list, was Infiltrators and 2 units of Intercessors. Yep. Elites, I've got 2 units of 5 Aggressors.
Why 5?
Well, my thought was that against the blast keyword, things like, I thought if there's Plasma Destroyers, I don't want them getting minimum 3 shots against me.
Yeah. Also,
5 is enough shots to kill anything it needs to kill, pretty much. Yeah. 5 is enough models to get rerolls from characters in combat. Because what I would normally do is string maybe 1 or 2 guys back, but I'm mainly fighting with 3 guys, so I can reroll all the hits. And I'm going to talk about some of my character abilities shortly. But I would actually be tempted to go 2 units of 6 and then combat squad them if I needed to.
Yeah, it's a good plan. Another good thing about 5 models is you don't pick up the 2 model coherency.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another big advantage. Probably a 5 unit string is probably bigger than a 6-man unit in terms of stringing out.
You would have to. You can still. I think it's literally exactly the same, because then the last guy can just be the bone on one end.
Yeah.
And then as long as he removes, so it's literally the same, I think, or maybe the 6 might be half an inch bigger, but it's there or thereabouts. Right? You just have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then I've got a Primaris Ancient as well. And the Primaris Ancient, I spent an extra... This is where I was talking to Alex Petford, who came second at the event. And he was looking at my list and he was like, I've never seen this stuff before. And I think he was genuinely impressed by what all these little things that I'd put together. And Alex is a great player. He'd made like the top 8 of the LBO. And we had a fantastic game in that last one. But the Primaris Ancient here, he's got the 1 CP Chapter Ancient ability, which gives him a 9-inch aura for when my models die. They shoot or they can make an attack in combat. They can fire one weapon when they die, so the Eradicators are just popping off again, which is great. Firing those melter guns, or a aggressor can fire his bolt storm aggressors or whatever. So he's brilliant. And then what I also did with him is I made him give him the warlord trait to make everybody objective secured within his aura range of 3 inches. So now all of my aggressors and all my eradicators, whilst they're within 6 inches of him, which they pretty much always were obsec.
6 inches or 3 inches?
Oh, sorry, 3 inches. But I gave him the Vox. So this is the relic, the Vox Espiritarum, which gives me additional 3 inches on all auras. So actually that 3 inches becomes 6 inches now.
And is that what made him 9 inches on the banner?
So that by being
12 inches.
By being a chapter banner, he gets 9, but then it goes up to 12.
That's great. That's nice. That.
And then I slapped another warlord trait on him, to allow everybody to heroically intervene as well, which is the Ultramarines one, which basically says once you've picked your warlord, you can then basically add another warlord trait onto a warlord. So that's what I did.
What was the range of that aura?
So that was 6 inches normally. So infantry and bites can heroically intervene. Goes up to 9. So now all of my aggressors can heroically intervene for each other.
Yeah, that's a tasty combo right there.
Yeah. Now that might be something that might be get FAQ'd, whether you can stack those warlord traits together. You looked at it and I looked at it and we couldn't see any problems with it. So it's fine, but it might change in the future. Who knows? But how it's worded so far, it seems okay. Now, then I had 3 units of Inceptors. Sorry, yeah, is that right? Inceptors with the Bolt Storm. And then I had in the heavy support 3 units of Eradicators.
Nice. So, what was your key stratagems and that you're using, you found throughout the tournament?
So normally strategic reserves, I put the Inceptors in Deep Strike. Sometimes the Phobos Lieutenant, and I'll definitely be doing that more, I think, actually. In terms of my deployment, I would pretty much deploy everything as if I was going first, and then spend 2 CPs if I was going second to redeploy anything that was out of position, that was in threat of being tabled, basically.
Yeah, there's a nice trick you can do, isn't there? So if you had 6 units, you could deploy 3 on the line and 3 hidden. And then if you're going second, you bring the front line guys back, or if you're going first, you could bring the back line guys to the front.
Yeah.
So I think that's something. It's a nice trick that an Ultramarine player can do during deployment to maximise the efficiency of that stratagem.
Yep, absolutely. Or I can put my infiltrators in the middle of the board, and if I realise you're going to get an early charge on them, I can redeploy them back into my backfield to keep them safe, and they can just raise banners for me or something.
Yeah, so that infiltrator one's really interesting because if your opponent's got units that want to infiltrate, take a Blood Angels army using the cursors to secure the mid-board, and they got all the combat threat, you could drop a unit of infiltrators out there first, knowing the fact that you're going to bring them back, but at least you stop that deployment in that area.
Yeah.
And then you could then withdraw them using the stratagem so they don't get picked up turn 1.
Yep. No, absolutely. And like Tigris' ability to put a -1 on a unit for the turn is amazing. I actually put that on himself quite a lot to keep him survivable.
It's a nice little bonus to his data sheet, isn't it?
Yeah, and he re-rolls all psychic powers and gets a +1.
Yeah, so he's very reliable as well.
He's like a Farseer and a Warlock combined to get the +1 and getting constant Farseer rerolls. So he's unreal.
And you need that for Null Zone.
You do.
Because when you need Null Zone to work, it's got to be cast, and he's obviously very reliable at doing it.
Yeah, or if if I do a smite, even if I pass it, I might just re-roll it to get a super smite off.
Yeah.
Because I do it on a 10, not an 11 or a 12, so because I get that +1. So that was great. And then some of the other key things for me, obviously I'm shooting when I'm dying within 12 inches. That's model to model basis. I'm sometimes using the ability to extend Calgar's aura range, which is good. The Relic Seal of Oath, so I pick a unit and I re-roll all hits and wounds against it, was incredible against the Baneblade. I fought turn 1. 2 units of Eradicators killed that thing with Seal of Oath on.
That's good, some good going.
It was.
But it's an incredible relic. But I forgot about the Ultramarines stratagem to extend all auras. That's a very interesting one as well. That's a good one.
I can also spend a CP to put a unit in Tactical Doctrine or Assault Doctrine for the turn if I do that at the start of the movement phase.
Which then obviously stacks very well with the Aggressors and the Ultramarine Super Doctrine.
Means
that
they
you
counter
station.
stationary. Yeah.
Yep, so your Aggressors can then move, double fire, AP -1.
Yeah, and then the other one that I took a lot against a Custode player was, or players, was 2 CPs, and for the turn, every 6 is an additional AP.
Okay, so you'll get into AP2 with those Aggressors.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And with the bolts and with the Inceptors become -3.
Yeah, that's nice if they drop that stratagem to ignore AP1 and 2.
Yeah, exactly. So that really helped in the Eradicators against anything that were vehicle that didn't have, you know, your -5 or 6 or whatever. So it's ridiculous. Yeah, yeah, to the point where it didn't even matter. But anyway, it's still a very, on those Aggressors, fantastic. On those Inceptors, brilliant. And then the other final one is Overwatch. So I spend 1 CP to Overwatch with a unit, and then I can spend I can spend 2 CPs to then Overwatch with 3 friendly units within 6 of that. So again, making sure like my whole army kind of moved as one big column, and then it sort of sent off units to the left or to the right to screen out. But I'd sometimes just track back a unit of infiltrators within 6 of a unit of aggressors, so that then if somebody charged my infiltrators, then all the aggressors can Overwatch.
That sounds like a very, very familiar tactic to me, that one.
Yeah, and then if they, charge the unit and aren't, and forget about the heroic intervention range, then all of a sudden all the aggressors heroically intervene. Now they've got a serious problem on their hands.
Yeah, big time. It's got, when you get within 24 inches of the threat range or 23 inches, you've got a real issue against that list, haven't you? And when you say that blocks move into the center board to grab the objectives, your opponent's got a fight on their hands to get that back once you get there.
Yeah, and one of my opponents, a Custode player, took the mission, which was controlling the middle, and also he took domination, which also needed to mean that both of them were on the outside. So I knew that he needed to basically push into the middle of the field, but I thought if I put my entire army in the middle, I can just stop him from doing that completely, and then I've got good firing lanes to both objectives where he wants to be to get his domination. So you can really start to, like you said, outmaneuver that Custode player, or think about their secondaries, and then actually think, where do they want to be? Okay, where do I need to be then to counteract where he wants to be? And now you're playing a strategic game where you're thinking turns ahead, not just trying to fight fires. Because the players that just fight fires will never win, unless they roll ridiculous or they get lucky or they're playing an opponent that's also doing the same. The players that can think ahead, right, what secondaries is he going for? What's he going to try to achieve? What threats do I need to neutralize in order to help me achieve that? So getting rid of the Vindicator was big, because then I can run around with my Lieutenant and my Chapter Boy without worrying where their positioning is.
Yeah, 100%. It's I think you touched on it well. It's the thinking those turns ahead. What do your opponent want to achieve? Which you kind of, when you pick your secondaries, you kind of reveal your hand, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, they want to be in all 4 table quarters. He wants to be in my deployment zone. They want to be in the center of the board. So at that point, you need to start thinking about, right, how do I then counter? How do I need to act to then counter him, but at the same time scoring my secondaries?
Yeah, or, okay, he wants to take the middle of the board, so he's going to try and deploy to take the middle of the board. So can I counter deploy him, or do I just ignore him? Do I, and I think that's where, again, when you reveal your secondaries as well, remember they're simultaneous. So write yours down first. Don't just tell your opponent what you're going to take, because otherwise they'll just go, oh, you're taking that. Oh, okay, I'll take this then. No, It's simultaneous. So make sure you write yours down. Just go, yep, I've got mine written down. Have you got yours written down? Yep, okay, cool. Show me which ones you've gone for. I'll show you what ones I've gone for, and then the other top tip I would give you is both of you keep score. Don't be lazy. Both of you keep score, because you might find there's indiscrepancies. There's up to 100 points you need to score now. It's not like ITT was 42, yeah? Back in, Maelstrom days or whatever, it might have been like, or the old chapter approved, it was like 10. So you can't, you need to be keeping score yourself. So if there is a problem, you can both look at your score sheets and find out where the indiscrepancies are to make sure you've got a good final solid score that you're happy with.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It's and then if you're both scoring, check it, it's worth at the end of every battle round to check you got the same score.
Yeah, and I think
because then
really good
when
tip.
you get to the end of the game, you're on the same page.
And that's so important. So you both feel like you've come away with the right result, and that's the most important thing. And I think on that bombshell, we'll leave that there. Jack, thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Thanks for having me again. And thanks for all the efforts that you foreground and the tournament put in the weekend. It was obvious that event was came together on a lot of hard work and a lot of passion to bring the tournament scene back to the UK. So, me on the behalf of all tournament UK players in the UK, thank you very much for all your efforts.
Oh, mate, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot. And obviously, mate, thanks so much for all the support you gave me pre, post, during, refereeing, being my roomie for the weekend. It was a really good weekend, and I can't wait for the next one. So, guys, if you want to get, like I said, enter that competition, all the details are on the website. If you want to download that Learn to Play free course on the website. If you want to find out when our next event's going to be, guess what that's going to be? It's going to be on the website. So it's a one-stop shop. Sign up for our email list, our newsletters. Make sure you click the button so you get our emails and newsletters when you sign up, because we're going to keep you informed of all that. Plus, we've got all of our terrain as well that we're going to share with you, where you can get your hands on that. We've got new dice and merchandise, and obviously VT now is going to be going from strength to strength. Now we've got the studio, we've got all the right people on board, and we're going to be pushing forward. And we'd like to thank each and every one of you that is a subscriber, that does listen to the podcast. To if you have written a review, we really, really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, then go and give us that 5 stars. Write something that you like about the show, and we'll share that on up and coming podcasts. So with that in mind, we'll see you next week, next Friday, on the Competitive 40K podcast. Take care.